Okay then, I'm going to review a book now that for a very long time was dubbed the greatest wrestling book ever written, especially the greatest wrestling biography ever written. And it's probably dubbed that for about a good 7-8 years until, you know, Jericho's book and then Bret Hart's book both came out, and they both overtook it, maybe because they were fresher and they had more stuff in there, they covered a longer period of time. But anyway, the book I'm talking about is Mick Foley's book Have a Nice Day, A Tale of Blood and Sweatsocks. Now, it's quite a good book in hindsight, but when I read it, I think it was the first wrestling book that I ever read, and in fact the first book that wasn't like a storybook I'd ever read, because until this time I only just come out of high school, so the only books I'd ever read were books I had to read for coursework purposes. So when I read this was the first book I'd ever read for leisure, basically. And yeah, Mick Foley's biography, and it's about, you know, that thick, like the book, as you can see there. It's as thick as my jaw line, my chin or whatever. That's quite a thick book, that. If you look at it compared to other books that don't have any in my near vicinity to show you, but it is quite a thick book. It's about 2-3 of the size of a Shawn Michaels book, for example. So yeah, it's a very thick book, and it gives you a lot of information in this book. But yeah, when I read it, it was like, because it was the first book I read for leisure, I wasn't really interested. I read it just for the sake of getting it out of the way, because my mate had lent me the book and he said, "Oh, you got to read this book, you got to read it, you'll enjoy it, you'll like it." And I wasn't a big fan of Mick Foley, but because he kept on plugging it to me like, "Oh, you got to read this, and you'll enjoy it." I thought, you know, I'll read it, but I'm not expecting great things out of it. And I didn't really, not that I didn't enjoy it, but I didn't enjoy it as much as I've enjoyed other books that have been dubbed as high, that have been rated as highly as that has been rated. Sorry, I'm mumbling my words there. So yeah, basically what I'm trying to say is that I enjoyed Chris Jericho's and Bret Hart's book far more than I enjoyed this Mick Foley book. That, like, you know, the amount of stuff that he wrote in this book was just far too much. But you know, my favourite story from the book off the top of my head is the one about the Montreal Screwjob, where he said the next day everyone was mentioning, "Oh, I might walk out of WWE, I might walk out because of what they did to Bret Hart," and like Mick Foley's the one who was going to carry it through to the most point, and I think he said it was Owen Hart or someone like that who talked him out of it, or maybe his wife, who said, "You know what's happened to Bret has happened, but you just got to make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else, so just stick around." And then he did stick around, and he did go back to work, but he was one of the main ones who was unhappy about the treatment of Bret Hart, and I thought it was really, really nice of him to do that, because, you know, it's just a co-worker at the end of the day, but it just shows the respect that Mick Foley had for Bret Hart and his fellow employees, where he wouldn't stand for them being disrespected by the boss. So yeah, I really enjoyed that part of the story. But I remember there was something in the book that I didn't agree with, like something he'd written that was on PC. I can't remember what it was now. It didn't really annoy me that much, but I just remember reading it thinking, you know, you shouldn't really be saying this, Mick Foley. You're like a hero to kids all over the world. I was only about 10-12 years old when this book was released, and if I would have read it then, I would have been reading this, and that would have probably influenced me a certain way of thinking with whatever he'd wrote in there. I can't remember what he'd written, but it's not important now. Yeah, it's a good book. I'd probably have to rate it quite highly. Otherwise there'll be a backlash, because people do really like this book. I'd give it about 7.75 out of 10, so 7.75 out of 10. It is a really good book, but personally I just didn't enjoy it as much as I could have enjoyed it. Would I buy this? I'd probably buy this book. If you've not read it and you're interested in Mick Foley, I'd buy this book. I was reading on Amazon before, and the paperback edition is 700 pages long, so you're definitely going to get value for money. And like, my problem is, when I was reading this book for leisure, is I'd only been used to reading books at school, so I was trying to read through those as quick as possible, just so I could write the report and, you know, get it out of the way. But with this book, because I was used to that mentality of reading through books as quick as possible, I was just trying to read through it as quickly as possible, and I sort of skimmed over stuff and I didn't get the most out of it. But you know, you're getting 700 pages, so just treat it as it is and only read a bit at a time, and you will get a lot of information out of this book, and it will be a fantastic read. It'll be a funny book, it'll be one that makes you laugh out loud, and I really do recommend that you buy it if you're a fan of Mick Foley.